Hello, welcome back to the Athena Protocol. We are going to be on chapter 5 today. A couple of things that I want you to pay attention to. Not my dog. But pay attention to the comments that Jessie, the protagonist, the narrator, that she makes about her feelings toward her mother. And then we're also going to get some more background information about how she met Hala and where Hala's family comes from. And hopefully my dogs will stop barking soon. All right, chapter 5 starts on page 70. Once I've made up my mind to go, I move fast. Soon enough, Amber will find out that I was snooping around on the Athena servers, and she'll figure out that I've broken into my own lockbox. Lee will literally spit feathers. It's bad enough when I imagine it. I don't want to be around to see it in person. Back at home, I gather clothes, a couple of books, and my debit cards. They pay us pretty well to do the work we do, but I need to buy some things on my way to the station and realize I have more in cryptocurrency right now than in real money. Since I'm going undercover in a place like Belgrade with no weapons, that might not be a bad thing, but I still need some regular cash. I hurry downstairs to the home office where Kit keeps her desktop Mac. She changes passwords every month, but she always has me do it for her. I suppose because she's never had a reason not to trust me. I was always good at school, never one of those kids stealing money from their parents to try drugs or smoking or whatever. No inappropriate boyfriends who I snuck around to meet. In fact, I remember Kit sitting down and giving me a talking to once about how it would be okay to rebel a bit. I don't think this is what she had in mind. I find the little password generating device from her bank in a wooden box in the bottom drawer of her desk. Right before I pull it out of there, I notice something underneath it. It's familiar, but I can't place it. Pale blue paper with a flowery pattern on the back. I bring it out onto the desk and unfold it. It's a note that I wrote her 10 years ago, right before she left on a concert tour. I printed a date on the top left, like they taught us to do at school. Holding my breath, I read through it. It tells her how much I would miss her when she was on tour again for 12 weeks, but that I would look after the house and Jeanette and keep up my grades at school. I fold it again, but something wet falls onto it. I brush the droplet away and realize that there are tears in my eyes, and one of them has fallen onto the paper and another onto the desk. I wipe my face with my hands and pull myself together. What on earth am I getting all sappy about? The fact that I was once able to say such adoring things to my mother, or that she got notes like that but left me anyway? Carefully, I put the note back. Alongside it in the box are a whole bunch of trinkets, a ring, ornaments, things I'd bought for her birthdays or whatever. I'm surprised that Kit kept them all. On the screen, the online banking app is flashing at me. I get on with it and transfer a small chunk of Kit's money into my own account, just enough that I can buy the kind of extras I might need along the way. As I close the door of the house behind me, I hesitate, just for a moment. Part of me feels reckless, heading out to Belgrade on the off chance that my hunches about the new Russian company and Paulina Pavlik mean something, and after being fired. But the irony is, if I were still part of Athena, I'd be able to keep following these leads till I had something concrete to hand off to Caitlin and Hala. But now, I've got no other way of doing this. And there's another thing bugging me. Putting my mother in the field is not a great idea. Sure, Caitlin will be there as her pretend bodyguard, and she's trained well enough to protect Kit from a lot. But Caitlin also has to raid Gregory's office while Kit is on stage, which means she'll have to replace his security camera feeds, disable alarms, and all sorts of nonsense. So guarding Kit is not going to be her main priority. What we're hoping, I suppose, is that Gregory himself will be looking after Kit, because he's clearly paying her a small fortune to join the ranks of singers who perform privately for millionaires and billionaires. These stars, usually former stars, I've noticed, earn hundreds of thousands or even millions for a single night's work, and the birthday boy earns bragging rights to all his friends. I know Kit will put that money into the foundation she runs to help disadvantaged women, but no one else will know that. If word gets out, it'll look like she's sold out to a human trafficker for a nice pension because her records don't sell anymore. I don't know how I can help protect my mother, or her reputation, by following her to Eastern Europe, but it somehow feels better that I'm close enough to try. After thinking about all that, I'm fairly stressed out by the time I make it to the best electronics shop in Tottenham Court Road. On the bus there, I spend 5 minutes creating a fake profile on an app that finds accommodations from Belgrade locals wanting to rent their apartments. I know the street I want to stay on, and there's only one room available. I book it online. Then I head into the shop and scope out the best cameras. An older man brings out a mid-range SLR, and I shake my head. "What's that?" I ask. On a raised display is a camera protected by a glass case. I can feel the assistant looking me up and down. Maybe my combat pants, t-shirt, and backpack don't help. He probably thinks I got lost looking for the pink phone cases. "I'd like to see that camera, please," I say. "It's 2,000 pounds. "Yes," I agree. There's a moment of standoff when he stares me down and I smile back. Then he turns away and takes forever to find a supervisor to get the key to unlock a storage cupboard behind the till. Finally, he brings out the camera, presenting it to me as if it's the Holy Grail. "Is this the absolute best camera you have?" "It came in last week, brand new model, and the most expensive." Nice of him to point that out again. "I'll take it," I say, and I pull out a wad of cash. That throws him. "Would you like me to show you some of the features?" "No, thanks." "What about a case?" 2,000 quid and there's no case?" I ask. Turns out he's trying to upsell a fancy one. I refuse all the extras, pay for the camera, and get out of there. I have a train to catch. St. Pancras Station. High glass ceilings let in London's late morning sun at the Eurostar terminal. Lots of passengers mill around, waiting to check in, and I hope it's the kind of place where I can blend in unnoticed. Among the items I managed to swipe from Amber was an EU identity card for a German called Helga Hess. Really, Amber has almost no imagination in some things, like coming up with fake names. And the picture on it was mine. With the ID card, I figure I can glide through immigration control with less chance of being flagged than if I used one of the other passports that Amber must surely be able to track through airports. Here at the train station, they don't usually scan the ID into a system. They just check it. I make it through security with barely enough time to buy a selection of newspapers and a sandwich for later. Then I find my seat and settle in for the journey. It's a little over 2 hours to Paris. I'm jolted awake as we pull into the Gare du Nord. I have less than half an hour to get over to Gare de l'Est, but it's only one stop, so I opt to walk rather than wait for another train. There's a light summer rain falling onto the streets of Paris, and two things glow out at me as I walk by the beautiful buildings. One is a McDonald's. The other is a small bakery. Ducking in there, I pick up a ham and cheese croissant, definitely not on any diet sheet from Lee, and actually make it onto the train for Munich with time to spare. Helga Hess, my ID alter ego, is from Munich, so I try to feel good about heading home, even though I've never actually set foot in the city. I'll barely have time to down a bratwurst before taking the sleeper train to Budapest, and then making the final leg south, at last, to Belgrade. The June sun is shining over Belgrade, but it only highlights the peeling shabbiness of the gray apartment blocks here in the new part of the city. There's some kind of abandoned state hospital that Gregory seems to have adopted as his trafficking base, and I know from my study of a city map that it's in this area somewhere. I'm in the back of an old taxi, and my eyes meet the stares of young men who sit on walls, smoking, texting, scratching arms, laughing. In the rearview mirror, the driver's hooded eyes flick up to me, and he speaks in a heavy accent. "No work here, only gangs." I look back outside. The high, ugly towers are giving way to other buildings now, still run down, but with an old-fashioned elegance. We cross a bridge into the old part of the city, and the small side streets give way to bigger ones. Graffiti is still everywhere, though. We make our way down an impressive boulevard, and the driver points out City Hall, and then the Parliament Building, which is where I guess Peggy's friend Alex, the Justice Minister, must spend his days. Several minutes later, we pull onto a quiet back street that feels chilly, where the sun can't find a way down past the old brick buildings. I pay the fare with the Serbian dinars I exchanged in Budapest and knock on the door that matches the address of the place I booked online. The man who opens up looks surprised and doesn't seem to speak any English. Not a great combination. But when I show him the booking on my phone, he nods and grins, revealing a gold crown in the back of his mouth. My grandmother used to have one of those, before they started making them white to match her actual teeth. All I remember of her is a couple of visits to a dingy house in Streatham. Even after Kit was famous and offered to buy her a picture postcard house near us, my grandmother didn't want to move from her old neighborhood and her friends. We'd sit at her kitchen table, covered in a white clean cloth, and eat homemade cake spread with jam and cream, which Kit only pretended to eat, not being keen on carbs or sugar. And nobody talked very much. All the nice, expensive things Kit bought for her were piled up in the back room, which irritated my mother to no end. My temporary landlord indicates that I should wait out here for a moment, So I kill time strolling up and down, glancing casually into windows while I wait. When I come back to the front door where he left me, I sneak a peek into his grimy side window. Inside the house, another man, thin, with slicked hair, is handing my landlord a stack of money. On the table between them is a bag of pistols. The thin guy zips up the bag, and hurriedly I step back into the street so they won't know that I've seen anything. Nothing like multiple streams of income. Why rely on room rentals when you can trade guns for extra cash? The landlord reappears a few seconds later with a large bunch of keys. He opens up the door next to his, and I throw my duffel bag over my shoulder and wait for him to lead the way inside. The stairwell is dingy, even now, in the middle of the afternoon, and it smells of rotting timber. I trudge up the wooden steps in his wake. He sports sagging jogging pants and a tight t-shirt, a small round head balanced on a large round body, like a badly dressed snowman. We reach the fourth floor landing, and he pauses tiredly and barks out a catarrh-laden cough while pointing upward. One more flight to go. Discreetly, I turn my head away from the stale breath and wait for him to continue up. The last door we pass gives off a smell of lunch, something fishy with a background note of fried onions. I wrinkle my nose as we reach the top landing and wait while the man tackles the lock. The door is heavy and leads into an apartment that has scuffed wooden floors and just enough light from the dirty windows so I can't miss the cockroach scuttling away under the dresser. I feel the hairs on the back of my neck prickle at the sight of it, but I make myself look away. I walk over to the window. The view brings a smile to my face. Down there, diagonally across the street, is the art gallery belonging to Gregory's daughter, Paulina. Cleanly painted, huge glass windows and a view directly inside. I can see the photography exhibits from here. Though I don't have plans to sit and watch the place, I like the idea that I can if I want to. In the back of the gallery, there's a long, sleek bar and several tables and chairs. A little upmarket cafe where well-to-do locals can sip cappuccinos amid the artwork, I suppose. Good? Behind me, the landlord sweeps a pudgy hand across the room, as if to make sure that I've not missed any of the attractive features of the apartment. I go over to the bed and sit down. The mattress is firm, at least. "I make spray," says the man, in response to my silence. With a wiggle of his fat fingers, he mimics the motion of the cockroach. I nod, get up to take the key, and escort the man back to the door and close it behind him. Then I throw myself down on the bed to stretch. It's quiet up here. No sounds from the neighbors, so far. Only some light traffic passing several stories down below. I close my eyes. I'm a bit of a loner, according to my mother, but I rarely feel lonely. Right now, though, here in this strange city with only a cockroach for company, it suddenly feels desolate. I miss my team. For 18 months, I've trained and worked alongside Caitlin and Hala, and before that, with the other kids in the program. Opening my eyes again, I take in the bumpy beige walls, and they remind me of Hala's apartment. Not the one she has now, but the tiny London council flat where she was placed after she finally gained asylum. It took months for Hala to get out of detention and nearly 2 weeks of interrogation to assure the government that she was not a potential terrorist, but a survivor of terrorism by the Islamic State in Syria. Frustrated by Hala's monosyllabic answers, the counterterrorism team had finally called me in. Not that I was trained for any of that, but my commanding officer at the program was still part of the British Counterterrorism Security Office, and he thought it was a good idea. I had no clue how to interrogate anyone. At that time, I was spending my days learning about circuits and wiring and explosives, and wasn't happy to be pulled off it. But he had thought that another girl, more or less Hala's own age, might encourage her to open up. So I tried being friendly, doing all that rapport-building stuff they teach you in teamwork classes. That had zero impact. Then I turned to officious questioning, and finally I lost my temper. None of it had the slightest effect on her. Not even her expression changed. She just sat there in the metal chair behind the metal desk in the painted green room, answering in a flat voice, with no detail. Like she couldn't care less what happened to her. And maybe she couldn't. After a couple of days, it had dawned on me that if Hala was telling the truth, then she would have watched her parents lose everything in Palestine and become refugees, then build a new life in Syria only to have a civil war start. She would have watched her town and the villages around her be razed to the ground and the people in them die. And if her story was real, if her parents had been killed by Caliphate soldiers in front of her, and she had stabbed one of the men who did it with a kitchen knife, then she wasn't going to be scared by an arrogant young girl barking at her. So I dropped the techniques. I just sat with her, made her tea, and talked about myself, a bit about school, what I had liked about it, what bugged me, filling up the spaces, asking nothing back of Hala at all. And the funny thing was, with the pressure off, she started to speak, a little bit at a time. Her English wasn't great, but it was okay. Her parents were doctors and taught her and her brother the language. Eventually, she gave up enough detail of what had happened and when, details that matched the intelligence they had on her. But she was most animated when she talked about her climbing skills, how her nickname was Ilbise, the cat. She had used that ability to scale walls to save her own life and escape, even though she had to separate from her brother. It was a heartbreaking story, to be honest, and I listened without saying a word. I was wary of making any sound that might cause her soft voice to stop, but also I didn't know what to say to someone who'd been through that much pain. The day after she was released, I went to see her in the council block where she was housed, the apartment with the beige walls. The place smelled of bleach and was immaculately clean, and so lonely. Hala's a tall, strong girl, but she looked so small and alone inside that room. I don't know why I went. I couldn't stop thinking about her story, especially at night when I was trying to get to sleep. I tried to make friends with her, and she was polite and offered me tea and food. I remember because it was hummus and cucumber sticks, which made me feel even worse, like she was having to buy grocery store hummus just to find something that felt familiar. I tried to chat a bit, but Hala kept me at arm's length, and I left feeling I had disturbed her. After that, I didn't go back, not until after I joined Athena and they were looking to build up the team. That time, visiting Hala was different. I found her up on the roof of the building, where the old man who was her neighbor told me she liked to hang out. When I came through the stairwell door, she jumped up and ran to the edge of the roof and just stood there watching me. Her shoes were halfway over, inches from a drop into oblivion. "Get away from me! I have asylum!" Hala yelled at me. I edged closer. "I'm not a terrorist!" I stopped where I was and told her I wasn't there to harm her or take her back to detention, that I was changing jobs and wanted her to work with me. "I have a job," she said, which made me smile, because I knew she did, and it was washing dishes in a rundown Italian restaurant on the next street. "Get down from there," I said. "It freaks me out." She did, landing like a panther, silently, without taking her eyes off me. And she softened a bit. When she offered me tea, I said yes, so I could hang around, and finally she asked me what the work was. I told her, and the idea of it seemed to light something up in her. And so her time with Athena had begun. Since then, though Hala often kept to herself, I'd always felt like that was just her character. That deep down she cared about me because, as far as I could see, I was the closest friend she had. And other than Caitlin, probably the only friend. But now it feels like all that's done with. Maybe it was only Athena that pulled us together. Two introverts, two people bound by the secrets we had to keep and the need to put our lives in each other's hands every time we ran a mission. I'm brought back to the present, to my lonely room in Belgrade, by a police siren passing down below. I wait till it pauses, keeping my mind blank, just listening. When it's gone, it feels deathly quiet in the room. I take an audible breath, just to break the silence, but it turns into a yawn. I've been traveling for more than 24 hours, and the fatigue hits me all at once. I turn on my side and fall hard into sleep, so deeply that I have no idea how long I've been out when I wake up to the sound of someone banging like crazy on the door. The end of chapter 5.